The rain pounded against the windows of the sprawling estate, where laughter and clinking glasses filled the air inside. Guests in tailored suits and glittering dresses were gathered for an extravagant engagement party hosted by the wealthy Hartman family. It was a celebration of love, or so it seemed. Out on the balcony, two young men stood facing each other, their suits soaked and their faces taut with anger. Jake, the younger and more impulsive of the two, clenched a crumpled envelope in his hand. His brother, Ryan, the epitome of control and precision, glared back at him, his jaw tight. "You knew how I felt about her," Jake spat, his voice breaking. "You knew, and you still went behind my back." Ryan's voice was calm, but the storm in his eyes mirrored the thunder outside. "Jake, you're acting like a child. Emma's a grown woman. She can make her own decisions." Jake raised the letter. "You think this is about me. It's not. It's about her, and what she's been hiding from both of us." Before Ryan could respond, the balcony doors opened. Emma stepped out, her silver dress shimmering under the dim light. Her usually soft expression was replaced with one of quiet determination. "Enough," she said firmly. "There's something you both need to know. 2 years earlier, Jake and Ryan didn't start as enemies. When their parents married 2 years ago, the brothers had formed an unlikely bond despite their differences. Jake, with his untamed curls and penchant for risk-taking, brought energy and unpredictability to their family dynamic. Ryan, polished and methodical, was the steady anchor. Together, they found balance, or so they thought. The Hartmans were known for their success in the luxury hospitality business, owning a string of high-end resorts. Ryan, always the dutiful son, was already being groomed to take over the family empire. Jake, on the other hand, wasn't sure where he fit in. He admired his brother's discipline, but chafed under the pressure of constant comparisons. Their world shifted when Emma moved back into town. Emma was a childhood friend of Ryan's, someone he'd lost touch with over the years. When she walked into their lives, her warm smile and sharp wit disarmed everyone, including Jake. She had returned to the area to open a small art studio, bringing color and creativity to a town that seemed to revolve around status and power. Ryan admired her ambition. Jake, however, was drawn to her authenticity. She wasn't impressed by wealth or titles, and she treated Jake like more than just the other brother. For the first time in years, Jake felt truly seen. The spark of rivalry. At first, their interest in Emma was subtle. Ryan would invite her to charity galas, claiming he needed her artistic eye for decor. Jake, meanwhile, would take her on spontaneous adventures, hiking trails, late-night drives, and impromptu art sessions in her studio. Neither brother acknowledged the growing tension between them until the night of Ryan's surprise dinner. Jake had overheard the plans, and in a rare moment of insecurity, decided to act first. The next evening, he brought Emma to a hidden hiking trail overlooking the valley. As the sun dipped below the horizon, painting the sky in hues of orange and purple, Jake took a deep breath. "Emma," he said, his voice uncharacteristically nervous, "I don't know how to say this, but you're different. You make everything brighter, easier. I know, I'm falling for you." Emma's eyes widened. Before she could respond, the sound of crunching gravel broke the silence. Jake turned to see Ryan standing a few feet away, his expression unreadable. "What are you doing here?" Jake demanded, his voice rising. Ryan's gaze shifted from Jake to Emma. "I could ask you the same thing." Emma, caught between them, raised her hands. "Stop. Both of you. This isn't how I want things to be." But it was too late. The unspoken rivalry had come to the surface, and there was no turning back. The letter. The months that followed were tense. Jake and Ryan's once solid bond began to fracture as their competition for Emma's affection intensified. Small gestures became grand displays. Ryan arranging exclusive art showcases for Emma's work, Jake building her a handcrafted easel from reclaimed wood. Emma tried to maintain her friendship with both brothers, but the strain was evident. The family felt it too. Holiday dinners were filled with awkward silences, and thinly veiled barbs. Their parents grew increasingly concerned, but neither brother was willing to back down. The turning point came on a quiet Sunday morning. Jake was in the study, sifting through old photo albums, when he stumbled upon a forgotten drawer in his father's desk. Inside was a stack of letters, neatly tied with a ribbon. Curiosity piqued. Jake untied the bundle and began to read. One letter, written in Emma's familiar handwriting, caught his attention. Dated several months earlier, it was addressed to no one in particular. I never intended for things to get this complicated. Ryan and Jake are incredible people, and I care about them deeply. But I can't let this continue. There's something I haven't told them. Something that could change everything. I'm not who they think I am, and if they find out the truth, I don't know if they'll ever forgive me. Jake's heart raced as he reread the words. What was Emma hiding? Why hadn't she told them? His mind filled with questions, each one more troubling than the last. The confrontation. Jake couldn't keep the letter to himself. That evening, as the rain poured down, he stormed into the estate where Ryan was preparing for the engagement party. Clutching the letter, he found his brother in the study, adjusting his tie in the mirror. "We need to talk," Jake said, his voice tight. Ryan barely glanced at him. "If this is about Emma, save it. I'm not interested in your games." Jake slammed the letter onto the desk. "This isn't a game, Ryan. Read it." Reluctantly, Ryan picked up the letter. As he read, his confident demeanor faltered. He looked up at Jake, his expression a mix of confusion and disbelief. "What is this?" "It's Emma's handwriting," Jake said. "I found it in Dad's desk. She's been hiding something from us, and I think we deserve to know what it is." Ryan shook his head. "You don't even know what this means. For all we know, it's just..." "Just what?" Jake interrupted. "She's been playing us, Ryan. Or maybe she's scared to tell us the truth because she knows it'll hurt." Before Ryan could respond, a knock at the door interrupted them. Their mother poked her head in. "The guests are arriving. Are you boys coming downstairs?" Neither answered. The tension between them was palpable. The storm. As the party unfolded downstairs, Jake and Ryan stood on the balcony, their argument escalating. The rain soaked through their suits, but neither seemed to notice. Jake waved the letter in the air, his frustration boiling over. "You're so convinced you're the perfect one, aren't you?" he shouted. "The one who deserts her. But you're blind, Ryan. Emma isn't perfect, and neither are you. And you think you're better," Ryan shot back. "You think storming in here with half a story makes you the hero. Grow up, Jake." The sound of the balcony doors opening silenced them. Emma stood there, her hair damp from the rain, and her face etched with determination. She walked toward them, her silver dress trailing behind her like a ghost. "That's enough," she said, her voice steady. "This ends now." Jake and Ryan turned to her, their anger replaced with confusion. Emma took a deep breath. "There's something you both need to know, and it's time I stopped hiding." The rain fell in rhythmic sheets, blurring the lights of the lavish engagement party inside. Emma stood between Jake and Ryan on the balcony, her silver dress glistening as water trickled down its fabric. Her hands trembled slightly, but her voice was steady. "This ends now," she repeated, locking eyes with each of them. "You both need to hear the truth." Jake stepped forward, holding the letter like a weapon. "Why didn't you tell us about this? Why keep it a secret? Were we just pawns in some kind of game?" Ryan, calmer but no less affected, added, "Emma, if there's something you've been hiding, we deserve to know. After everything." Emma closed her eyes briefly, steeling herself. "I never wanted this," she began, her voice tinged with both regret and resolve. "When I came back here, my goal wasn't to disrupt your lives or create this mess. I came here because I owe your family everything." The brothers exchanged a confused glance. "What are you talking about?" Ryan asked. Emma's gaze softened, and she looked at them with a mix of gratitude and guilt. "Your father saved my family. The hidden connection. Years earlier, Emma's family had been in crisis. Her father's small business, a local hardware store, had been struggling to stay afloat. A devastating fire had destroyed the store, leaving the family on the brink of financial ruin. With mounting debts and no insurance to cover the loss, Emma's parents faced the unimaginable prospect of losing their home. One night, Emma said, her voice breaking slightly, "Your father showed up at our door. I don't know how he found out about our situation, but he didn't come to gloat or offer pity. He handed my dad an envelope filled with money. Enough to rebuild, to start over." Jake and Ryan stood frozen, the rain forgotten. Their father was a proud, no-nonsense businessman, not the type to hand out charity. This revelation painted him in a new, startling light. Emma continued, "He made my dad promise not to tell anyone, especially you two. He said he didn't want his kindness to change how you saw him or to create tension within your family. All he wanted was for us to have a chance." Emma's return. Emma's family had managed to rebuild their lives thanks to the anonymous generosity of Ryan and Jake's father. Her parents worked tirelessly, and within a few years, the hardware store was thriving again. But the memory of that night, and the gratitude it inspired, never left Emma. "When I got older," Emma explained, "I knew I wanted to repay that kindness. Not with money, but by living a life that honored the chance your father gave us. When I found out he passed away last year," she paused, her voice thick with emotion, "I decided to move back here. I wanted to thank your family, to find a way to show my gratitude." Ryan frowned. "Why didn't you just tell us?" Emma hesitated. "Because I didn't want this. I didn't want you to feel obligated or like my gratitude was some kind of burden. And then I got to know you both, and things got complicated. Caught in the middle." Emma took a deep breath, visibly struggling to put her feelings into words. "Jake, Ryan, you're both incredible in your own ways. Jake, you have this way of making people feel alive, like anything is possible. And Ryan, your steadiness, your drive, it's inspiring. Being around you both reminded me of what I want in my own life." Jake's voice cracked as he asked, "Then why write the letter? Why say you couldn't let this continue?" Emma looked at him, her eyes filled with regret. "Because I knew I was hurting you both. I knew that no matter what I did, one of you would get hurt. And I didn't want to be the reason you lost each other." Her words hung in the air, heavy with the weight of truth. The brothers' reactions. Jake ran a hand through his wet hair, his frustration evident. "So what now? Are you saying this was all for nothing? That you're walking away?" Ryan's jaw tightened. "Jake, calm down. This isn't just about us. Emma's been carrying this alone for years. Maybe we should think about what she's been through instead of focusing on our own feelings." Jake turned on him, anger flaring. "Oh, of course. Ryan, the perfect one. Always the voice of reason. Do you ever stop pretending to have it all figured out? Enough." Emma's voice cut through their argument like a blade. "This isn't about who's right or wrong. It's about the fact that you two are brothers. And no relationship, romantic or otherwise, is worth losing that." Her words struck a chord, and for a moment, the brothers stood in silence, their rivalry momentarily eclipsed by the weight of her plea. A shocking offer. As the rain began to let up, Emma stepped closer to them. "I'm leaving," she said softly. "I can't stay here and watch you tear each other apart. But before I go, there's one last thing I want to do." She reached into her clutch and pulled out a small weathered notebook. "This belonged to your dad," she explained. "He gave it to my dad that night, and it's the only thing he ever asked us to keep. I think it's time it came back to your family." Jake took the notebook, his hands trembling slightly. Flipping through the pages, he saw notes in their father's handwriting, lists of people he'd helped, debts he'd forgiven, and ideas for the community projects he never mentioned to anyone. Ryan looked over Jake's shoulder, his usually stoic expression softening. "He never told us about any of this." Emma smiled faintly. "Your father was a good man, not because he wanted recognition, but because he believed in doing what was right. I think he'd want you to remember that. The ripple effect. Emma's words lingered long after she walked away. Jake and Ryan, left alone on the balcony, stared out at the rain-soaked landscape in silence. Finally, Jake spoke. I didn't know Dad had this side to him. Ryan nodded. Neither did I. But maybe that's the point. Maybe we've been so focused on competing, on proving ourselves, that we lost sight of what really matters. Jake let out a bitter laugh. Yeah, like family. For the first time in months, they shared a genuine moment of connection. It was tentative, but it was a start. Emma's departure. The next morning, Emma packed her things and left town, leaving a heartfelt note for both brothers. In it, she thanked them for their friendship and urged them to rebuild their bond. Your father believed in the power of family, she wrote. Don't let that legacy go to waste. Her absence was deeply felt, but it also served as a wake-up call. Jake and Ryan began to repair their relationship, using their father's notebook as a guide. They discovered projects he'd started but never finished, scholarships for local students, funding for small businesses, and more. Working together, they brought these initiatives to life, honoring their father's memory in the process. Reflection. Months later, Jake and Ryan found themselves at the opening of a new community center, funded by their family's foundation. As they stood together, watching the smiling faces of those they'd helped, Jake turned to Ryan. You think Emma knows about all this? He asked. Ryan smiled faintly. I think she'd be proud. Jake nodded, a rare moment of agreement between them. You know, for what it's worth, I'm glad we figured this out, even if it took losing her to get here. Ryan clapped a hand on his brother's shoulder. Me too. As the crowd applauded the unveiling of the center's plaque, dedicated to their father, the brothers shared a quiet moment of gratitude, their bond stronger than ever. The morning after Emma left, the Hartman estate was eerily quiet. Rain still lingered in the air, creating a mist that enveloped the sprawling property. Jake sat alone in the study, the old notebook resting on the desk before him. He had read through its contents twice now, each page unraveling a version of their father he had never known. Ryan entered, holding 2 steaming cups of coffee. Couldn't sleep either, he asked, setting one cup down next to Jake. Jake shook his head, his gaze fixed on the notebook. Dad did all of this without telling us. Scholarships, donations, helping families like Emma's. It's like he had this whole other life we never knew about. Ryan pulled up a chair, his face thoughtful. Maybe he didn't want us to know because he didn't want us to feel like we owed him something. He always said real generosity doesn't need applause. Jake chuckled bitterly. He sure got that right, but now I can't stop wondering how many more people out there owe everything to him. Ryan leaned back, sipping his coffee. Maybe it's time we found out. Uncovering the truth. The brothers decided to dig deeper into their father's secret legacy. Armed with the notebook, they began reaching out to the people listed on its pages. Some names were familiar, employees who had worked for the Hartman resorts for decades. Others were complete strangers. Their first visit was to a retired janitor named Mr. Collins, who had worked at the family's flagship hotel for over 30 years. When they arrived at his modest home, the elderly man greeted them with a warm smile. I wondered if I'd ever see you boys, Mr. Collins said, inviting them in. As they sat in his cozy living room, he shared a story that left them speechless. Years ago, his wife had fallen ill, and medical bills had nearly bankrupted their family. One day, Mr. Hartman had called him into his office and handed him a check large enough to cover all their expenses. I tried to refuse, Mr. Collins said, his voice trembling with emotion. But your father wouldn't hear of it. He said, "You've given this company your best years, and it's time we gave something back." That check saved my wife's life. Jake and Ryan exchanged a glance, the weight of their father's quiet generosity settling over them. A pattern of kindness. Over the next several weeks, the brothers visited more names from the notebook. They met a young woman who had received a scholarship to study medicine, a struggling farmer whose debts had been erased after a bad season, and a single mother whose rent had been paid during a particularly tough year. Each story painted a picture of a man who cared deeply about his community, a man who saw his wealth as a tool to uplift others rather than a symbol of status. But the more they learned, the more they realized how far their own lives had drifted from their father's values. A harsh truth. One evening, after a long day of meetings and phone calls, the brothers returned to the estate. Jake poured himself a drink and slumped onto the couch. "You ever feel like we've been living the wrong life?" he asked Ryan. Ryan frowned. "What do you mean?" Jake gestured vaguely around the room. "This. All of this. Fancy suits, big parties, fighting over who gets to run the company. It's like we've spent our whole lives chasing something that doesn't even matter." Ryan sat down beside him, his expression serious. "You're not wrong. Dad clearly didn't care about the spotlight or the accolades. He cared about people. And we've been so busy trying to one-up each other, we forgot what really matters." Jake sighed, running a hand through his hair. "So what do we do? How do we fix this?" Ryan thought for a moment. "We start by finishing what Dad started. Rebuilding the legacy." Inspired by their father's actions, Jake and Ryan decided to create a foundation in his honor. They named it the Hartman Legacy Initiative, dedicated to supporting education, small businesses, and families in need. Using the remaining names in the notebook as a starting point, they began reaching out to the community to identify areas where they could make the biggest impact. One of their first projects was a scholarship program for underprivileged students. Jake, who had always struggled to find his place in the family business, took charge of this initiative. For the first time, he felt a sense of purpose. Ryan, on the other hand, focused on microloans for small businesses, leveraging his expertise in finance to create sustainable growth opportunities for entrepreneurs. The brothers found themselves working together in a way they never had before. Their shared goal, honoring their father's legacy, brought them closer than they'd ever been. A chance encounter. One day, while visiting a community center they had funded, Jake and Ryan were approached by an elderly woman. She introduced herself as Mrs. Larkin and handed them a small photo. It was a picture of their father standing in front of a modest home, surrounded by a smiling family. "This was the day your father helped us keep our house," she explained. "He didn't just save us from losing our home. He gave us hope. I thought you boys should have this." Jake studied the photo, his throat tightening. "We had no idea he did all this." Mrs. Larkin smiled gently. "Your father was a remarkable man, but he didn't do it for recognition. He did it because he believed in the power of kindness. And I think you two are more like him than you realize." The community responds. Word of the Hartman Legacy Initiative spread quickly, and the brothers were overwhelmed by the outpouring of support. Former employees, friends, and even strangers reached out to share stories of how their father had touched their lives. One story, in particular, stood out. A young man named Marcus approached them during a town hall meeting. He explained that he had been a troubled teenager on the verge of dropping out of school when Mr. Hartman offered him a job at one of the resorts. "He told me I was worth more than the mistakes I'd made," Marcus said, his voice thick with emotion. "That job changed my life. I wouldn't be standing here today if it weren't for him." Jake and Ryan listened, their hearts swelling with both pride and sorrow. They were beginning to see their father not just as a businessman, but as a force for good in the world. A reunion. As the foundation grew, the brothers received an unexpected message. It was from Emma. She had heard about their efforts and wanted to meet. The reunion was bittersweet. Emma was proud of what they had accomplished but made it clear that her decision to leave hadn't changed. "This was never about me," she said. "It was about you two finding your way back to each other and to what your father stood for." Jake smiled wistfully. "Well, you were right. We were lost, but I think we're finally starting to figure it out." Ryan nodded in agreement. "Thank you, Emma, for everything." She smiled, her eyes glistening. "Your father would be proud." Reflection and growth. As the months passed, Jake and Ryan continued to grow, not just as brothers, but as individuals. They learned to appreciate each other's strengths and worked together to create a lasting impact in their community. Jake, who had once felt aimless, discovered a passion for mentoring young people, using his own experiences to guide them. Ryan, who had always been focused on success, learned the value of vulnerability and connection. Together, they honored their father's memory by embodying his values and ensuring that his legacy would live on. One chilly morning, Jake arrived at the foundation's office, the faint aroma of coffee mingling with the scent of freshly printed papers. Ryan was already there, poring over spreadsheets. His meticulous nature often drove Jake crazy, but today he sensed something different in his brother's demeanor. "What's up?" Jake asked, tossing his jacket onto a chair. Ryan sighed, rubbing his temples. "We've hit a snag. The city council is pushing back on one of our community center projects. They're claiming zoning issues." Jake frowned. "Zoning issues? That's just bureaucracy for we don't want to deal with it. Did you talk to them?" Ryan nodded. "I've tried, but they're not budging. They think the project is too ambitious and could disrupt the neighborhood." Jake's frustration boiled over. "That's ridiculous. This isn't about disrupting anything. It's about helping people. They're just looking for excuses." Ryan leaned back in his chair, his expression weary. "We'll figure it out, Jake. We just need to be patient and strategic." "Strategic?" Jake snapped. "While we're being strategic, families are still struggling. Dad wouldn't have let this stop him." Ryan's gaze hardened. "And rushing in without a plan won't help anyone. We need to be smart about this." The tension between them crackled like a live wire. Jake stormed out of the office, his mind racing with frustration and determination. A risky move. Jake couldn't sit idle while the project stalled. That afternoon, he visited the neighborhood where the community center was supposed to be built. The area was a patchwork of worn-down homes and vacant lots, but it was alive with children playing, neighbors chatting, and the sounds of everyday life. He met with residents, explaining the vision for the community center and how it could benefit them. To his surprise, many were supportive, sharing their hopes for a safe space where kids could learn and play. Encouraged, Jake decided to take matters into his own hands. He organized a town hall meeting, inviting residents and city officials to discuss the project. He didn't tell Ryan. He knew his brother would disapprove, but he felt it was the right thing to do. The meeting was a mix of emotions, hope, skepticism, and, at times, heated debate. Jake poured his heart into his pitch, emphasizing the legacy of their father and the transformative power of the community center. By the end of the night, many residents were on board, and even some city officials seemed swayed. But not everyone was pleased. The fallout. When Ryan found out about the meeting, he was furious. Jake had barely walked into the office the next morning when his brother confronted him. "Do you have any idea what you've done?" Ryan demanded, his voice low and controlled, which only made his anger more palpable. Jake shrugged, trying to mask his own defensiveness. "I got people on our side. Isn't that the point?" "The point," Ryan said sharply, "is to work together and follow a plan. You went behind my back and risked everything we've built. What if the city council sees this as us trying to strong-arm them? We could lose funding." "Jake." Jake's temper flared. "You're so obsessed with doing things by the book that you've forgotten why we're doing this in the first place. Dad didn't wait around for permission when he helped people. He just did it." Ryan's eyes narrowed. "And look where that got him, overextended and constantly stressed. This isn't just about doing good. It's about doing it sustainably." The argument escalated until both brothers were shouting, their words cutting deep. Finally, Jake grabbed his jacket and stormed out, slamming the door behind him. A moment of clarity. Jake drove aimlessly for hours, the weight of the fight pressing heavily on him. He ended up at the trail where he and Emma had hiked months ago. Parking his car, He climbed the familiar path until he reached the overlook. The view of the valley below was breathtaking, the city lights twinkling like stars. As he stood there, his mind drifted to his father. He remembered the countless times his dad had told him, "You don't build bridges by burning them. You build them by finding common ground." Jake sighed, realizing how far he'd strayed from that lesson. He'd let his frustration cloud his judgment, pushing away the one person who shared his vision. The turning point. The next morning, Jake returned to the office. Ryan was at his desk, his expression guarded. Before his brother could say anything, Jake held up his hands. "I messed up," he admitted. "I shouldn't have gone behind your back. I was so focused on getting things done that I didn't stop to think about the consequences. I'm sorry." Ryan's expression softened, though his posture remained stiff. "I appreciate that. But this isn't just about the meeting, Jake. It's about trust. If we're going to do this together, we need to be on the same page." Jake nodded. "You're right. So how do we fix this?" Ryan thought for a moment. "We go back to the city council together. We show them the community support you've built, but we also address their concerns. We can't bulldoze our way through this. We need to collaborate." For the first time in weeks, Jake felt a sense of relief. "Okay, let's do it." The council meeting. A week later, Jake and Ryan stood side by side in a packed city council chamber. Residents from the neighborhood had shown up in droves, holding signs and wearing shirts in support of the community center. The atmosphere was electric. Ryan, ever the strategist, opened their presentation with a detailed plan addressing the council's concerns about zoning and funding. Jake followed with a heartfelt speech, sharing stories from the residents and highlighting the impact the center could have. The brothers worked seamlessly, their contrasting styles complementing each other in a way that felt natural and right. By the end of the meeting, the council members were visibly moved. After a tense deliberation, the council voted unanimously to approve the project. Rebuilding trust. The victory was a turning point for Jake and Ryan. It wasn't just about the community center. It was about learning to trust each other again. They began to communicate more openly, respecting each other's strengths and finding ways to work together. The project moved forward quickly, with both brothers taking active roles. Jake focused on connecting with residents and overseeing construction, while Ryan managed the finances and logistics. Their combined efforts created a center that was not just a building but a symbol of hope and unity. A surprise visitor. On the day of the grand opening, the brothers were greeted by an unexpected guest, Emma. She stood at the entrance, looking radiant and proud. "I couldn't miss this," she said, hugging them both. "You've done something incredible here." Jake grinned. "We had a lot of help." Emma looked around at the bustling crowd, her eyes shining. "Your father would be so proud. And I think you both should be too." A legacy fulfilled. The grand opening was a resounding success. The community center buzzed with activity, children laughing in the play area, parents attending workshops, and volunteers offering tutoring and mentorship programs. It was everything Jake and Ryan had envisioned, and more. As they stood together, watching the scene unfold, Jake turned to Ryan. "We did it." Ryan smiled. "Yeah, we did." Jake hesitated before adding, "I couldn't have done this without you." "I mean that." Ryan clapped a hand on his shoulder. "Same here. Turns out we make a pretty good team." For the first time in years, the brothers felt truly connected, not just as siblings, but as partners in a shared mission. Reflection. Later that evening, Jake and Ryan visited their father's grave. They stood in silence for a while, the cool night air wrapping around them. "Thanks, Dad," Jake said softly, "for everything." Ryan nodded, his voice steady. "We'll keep making you proud." As they walked away, the stars above seemed to shine a little brighter, as if their father's spirit was watching over them, proud of the men they had become. The community center became a hub of life and hope for the neighborhood. Children played in the newly built playground. Families attended workshops, and teenagers sought mentorship programs that Jake and Ryan had carefully curated. The Hartman brothers had transformed their father's quiet acts of kindness into a visible, thriving force for good. But the journey was far from over. An unexpected challenge. A few months after the grand opening, Ryan walked into the foundation's office with a concerned look. He dropped a thick envelope onto Jake's desk. "We have a problem." Jake, who was reviewing applications for the foundation's next scholarship program, glanced up. "What now?" "Another zoning issue." Ryan shook his head. "Worse. Someone filed a lawsuit against the foundation. They're claiming we misused funds for personal gain." Jake froze. "What? That's ridiculous. Who would even say that?" Ryan opened the envelope, revealing a stack of legal documents. "Apparently, a former contractor. He's accusing us of using the foundation's funds to boost our business profile." Jake's anger flared. "That's a lie, and you know it. Everything we've done has been for the foundation." Ryan nodded, his expression grim. "I know, but it doesn't matter. If this goes public, it could ruin everything we've built." Investigating the allegations, determined to clear their name, the brothers dove into the foundation's financial records. Ryan's meticulous bookkeeping proved invaluable as they combed through every expense, ensuring that nothing was out of place. At the same time, Jake reached out to their network of supporters, gathering testimonies from those who had benefited from the foundation's programs. Their efforts revealed the contractor's motivations. He had been fired months earlier for cutting corners on a project and had decided to retaliate by fabricating the allegations. Armed with evidence, Ryan filed a countersuit, while Jake worked to control the narrative in the community. The lawsuit became a test of their resilience, but it also brought them closer together. Late nights in the office turned into brainstorming sessions and moments of quiet reflection. They realized how much they relied on each other, not just as business partners, but as brothers. A community stands up. As news of the lawsuit spread, something incredible happened. The community rallied around the Hartman brothers. Residents who had benefited from the foundation's programs organized a fundraiser to support their legal fees, while local business owners publicly defended their integrity. One evening, as Jake and Ryan attended a town hall meeting, a young girl named Lily approached the microphone. She was a scholarship recipient, now thriving in her first year of college. With the Hartman Foundation's help, she began, her voice trembling with emotion. "I'm the first person in my family to go to college. I wouldn't be here without them. If anyone doubts their intentions, let me tell you this. They're not just helping people, they're changing lives." Her words brought the room to its feet in applause, and Jake and Ryan felt the weight of the community's belief in them. The trial, and a lesson learned. When the case went to trial, the brothers presented their evidence with unwavering confidence. Their lawyer showcased detailed financial records, testimonies from program beneficiaries, and even messages from the contractor that hinted at his vendetta. The turning point came when Emma, who had been following the case from afar, surprised everyone by testifying. "The Hartman brothers have dedicated their lives to honoring their father's legacy," she said. "I've seen firsthand the impact of their work. They don't just talk about helping others, they live it." Her testimony was the final blow to the contractor's case. The judge dismissed the lawsuit, ruling in favor of the Hartman Foundation. Outside the courthouse, Jake and Ryan were greeted by a cheering crowd. It wasn't just a victory for them, it was a victory for the community. The ripple effect. The lawsuit, though a painful ordeal, became a turning point for the foundation. The media coverage brought attention to their work, inspiring donations and partnerships from across the country. Jake and Ryan seized the opportunity to expand their programs, reaching underserved areas beyond their local community. One of their new initiatives was a mentorship program for at-risk youth, inspired by their father's belief in second chances. Jake took a personal interest in the program, mentoring a young man named Caleb who reminded him of himself, passionate but directionless. Through their sessions, Jake saw Caleb transform from a skeptical teenager into a confident young man with dreams of becoming an architect. It was a reminder of the power of connection and the importance of paying kindness forward. A milestone celebration. A year after the lawsuit, the foundation celebrated its 5-year anniversary with a gala. The event was held at the community center, now a symbol of resilience and hope. The space was filled with laughter, music, and stories of transformation. Emma attended, her presence bringing a sense of closure for Jake and Ryan. She spent the evening mingling with guests, listening to their stories, and marveling at how far the brothers had come. During the speeches, Ryan took the stage first. "This foundation started as a way to honor our father's legacy," he said, "but along the way, it became so much more. It became a bridge, connecting people, building trust, and creating opportunities." Jake followed, his tone more casual but just as heartfelt. "We've made mistakes, fought like crazy, and faced challenges we never saw coming. But through it all, we've learned that what matters most is the people we serve. This isn't just about us. It's about all of you." As the crowd erupted in applause, Jake and Ryan exchanged a look of mutual respect. They had come a long way from the brothers who had once fought over everything. A new chapter. The gala marked not just a celebration, but the beginning of a new chapter. Jake and Ryan decided to step back from the day-to-day operations, empowering a new generation of leaders to carry the foundation forward. They remained involved as mentors and advisors, but they knew it was time to trust others to continue their father's mission. For Jake, this meant pursuing his passion for art, something he had put on hold for years. He opened a small studio where he taught workshops for kids, combining his love for creativity with his commitment to giving back. Ryan, ever the strategist, started a consulting firm that helped other nonprofits maximize their impact. He found fulfillment in sharing the lessons he had learned, ensuring that their father's legacy extended far beyond their foundation. A quiet reflection. One evening, after the gala, Jake and Ryan visited the community center together. The building was quiet, the hum of the air conditioning the only sound. They walked through the halls, admiring the artwork created by local kids and the photos documenting the center's journey. In the main hall, they stopped by a plaque mounted on the wall. It read, "In memory of Robert Hartman, whose quiet generosity inspired us all to be better, do better, and build bridges where there were none." Jake traced the words with his fingers. "You think Dad ever imagined all of this?" Ryan shook his head, a small smile on his lips. "Probably not. But I think he'd be proud." Jake nodded, his voice soft. "Yeah, me too." The final reflection. As they left the center that night, the brothers felt a sense of peace they hadn't experienced in years. Their journey had been filled with challenges, heartbreak, and lessons they hadn't expected. But it had also been filled with growth, connection, and the undeniable power of a shared purpose. Jake glanced at Ryan as they walked to their car. "So, what's next?" Ryan smirked. "Whatever it is, we'll figure it out. Together." For the first time in a long time, Jake didn't feel like the other brother. He felt like an equal, a partner, and most importantly, a part of something bigger than himself. The Hartman Foundation was thriving, and Jake and Ryan had begun transitioning their leadership to a new team. The brothers had accomplished what seemed impossible, turning their father's quiet acts of kindness into a lasting legacy that spanned generations. But as the foundation expanded, the brothers faced a new challenge: how to ensure their father's vision lived on without them at the helm. The final board meeting. The foundation's office buzzed with activity on the day of the final board meeting with Jake and Ryan as co-directors. Staff members prepared presentations, new leaders reviewed strategies, and the atmosphere brimmed with excitement and anticipation. Jake leaned against the conference table, watching as Ryan meticulously organized his notes. "You nervous?" Jake asked. Ryan shook his head, though the tight grip on his pen betrayed him. "Not nervous. Just reflective. This is the last time we'll be sitting in these chairs, making these decisions." Jake smirked. "You mean it's the last time you'll be micromanaging everything?" "I, for one, am ready to let someone else take the reins. Ryan shot him a look but couldn't help but smile. You know, I'll miss this. Us working together. Even the arguments. Jake's grin softened. Me too. But we built something real here. Something that'll outlast us. As the meeting began, the brothers addressed the board, reflecting on the foundation's journey and their hopes for the future. They introduced the new leadership team, emphasizing their trust in them to carry forward the foundation's mission. Dad always believed in empowering others, Ryan said in his closing remarks. Today, we honor that belief by passing the torch to a team we know will continue to make a difference. Revisiting the past. After the meeting, Jake suggested they visit their father's old office in the family estate. It had remained untouched since his passing, a time capsule of his work and values. As they entered, the scent of aged wood and leather brought back a flood of memories. Jake ran his fingers along the edge of their father's desk. Remember how we used to sit here as kids, pretending we were running the company? Ryan chuckled, leaning against the doorframe. Yeah, you always wanted to be the boss, and I was happy to let you. Until Dad walked in and asked for a business report. Jake laughed, the sound tinged with nostalgia. He always had a way of turning everything into a lesson. As they sifted through their father's belongings, they found a small, locked box. Curious, Ryan retrieved the key from a drawer and opened it. Inside was a collection of handwritten letters, each addressed to someone different. Jake picked up one of the letters and began to read aloud. It was a heartfelt note to a former employee, expressing gratitude for their years of service and offering support during a difficult time. Ryan examined another letter. It's like he knew the power of his words, how they could lift someone up when they needed it most. The brothers decided to incorporate the letters into the foundation's archives, preserving their father's personal touch as part of his legacy. A new purpose. With their roles at the foundation coming to an end, Jake and Ryan began exploring their next chapters. For Jake, this meant expanding his art studio into a community space where local artists could showcase their work and teach classes. Ryan, ever the strategist, launched a nonprofit consulting firm, using the lessons he had learned to help other organizations maximize their impact. His first clients included small, grassroots initiatives that reminded him of their father's humble beginnings. Despite their new paths, the brothers remained deeply connected to the foundation. They attended events, mentored the new leaders, and continued to support its growth. Their bond, once strained by rivalry and misunderstanding, had become a source of strength and inspiration. An unexpected letter. One evening, Jake was cleaning out his art studio when he found an envelope tucked into a box of old supplies. The handwriting was unmistakably Emma's. He opened the letter, his heart racing as he read her words. Jake and Ryan, I've been following your journey from afar, and I can't express how proud I am of what you've accomplished. Your father's legacy lives on, not just in the foundation, but in the people you've become. I've found my own purpose here, working with underserved communities and using my art to create change. But I wanted you to know that you've inspired me in ways I never thought possible. Keep building bridges. Keep making a difference. With love, Emma. Jake shared the letter with Ryan, who smiled as he read it. She's right, you know. We've come a long way. Jake nodded. Yeah. And I think we're just getting started. A ripple effect. The foundation's impact continued to grow, with new programs reaching communities across the country. The mentorship program inspired a series of success stories, including Caleb, the young man Jake had mentored. He had gone on to study architecture and returned to his hometown to design affordable housing projects. One evening, Caleb visited Jake's studio, carrying a portfolio of his work. I wouldn't be here without you, he said. You believed in me when I didn't believe in myself. Jake smiled, his chest swelling with pride. You did the hard work, Caleb. I just pointed you in the right direction. Ryan experienced similar moments through his consulting firm. He worked with a small nonprofit run by a single mother who had once been helped by their father. Together, They developed a program to provide childcare and job training for struggling families. "It feels like everything's come full circle," Ryan told Jake during one of their weekly catch-ups. "We're not just honoring Dad's legacy, we're expanding it." A legacy of kindness. The brothers' work began to inspire others to take action. Communities that had benefited from the foundation started their own initiatives, creating a ripple effect of kindness and compassion. The Hartman name became synonymous with hope and transformation. At the foundation's 10-year anniversary gala, Jake and Ryan were honored with a special tribute. As they stood on stage, surrounded by friends, family, and beneficiaries, they reflected on the journey that had brought them here. "This isn't just our father's legacy," Ryan said, his voice steady. "It's all of ours. Every person here has contributed to this story, and together, we've proven that one act of kindness can change the world." Jake added, "We've learned that success isn't about how much you have. It's about how much you give. And we're grateful to be part of something so much bigger than ourselves." The crowd erupted in applause, a testament to the lives they had touched. A quiet evening. After the gala, Jake and Ryan returned to the community center for one final visit. The building was quiet, the hallways bathed in soft light. They walked through the familiar spaces, taking in the artwork, the photos, and the memories. In the main hall, they'd found a group of teenagers rehearsing a play. The director, a former scholarship recipient, greeted them warmly. "We're doing a show about community and resilience," she explained. "It's inspired by your family's story." Jake and Ryan watched the rehearsal for a while, their hearts full. As they left, Jake turned to Ryan. "You know, I think this is what Dad wanted all along, not just to help people, but to inspire them to help each other." Ryan nodded, his voice quiet. "And now it's up to them to carry it forward." Full circle. The brothers drove home in comfortable silence, the weight of their journey finally lifting. They had started as rivals, driven by their own ambitions and insecurities. But through their shared mission, they had found a deeper understanding of themselves and each other. As they pulled into the driveway of the family estate, Jake glanced at Ryan. "So what's next for us?" Ryan smiled. "Whatever it is, I think we'll figure it out. Together." For the first time, Jake didn't feel like the other brother. He felt like a partner, a builder of bridges, and a part of a legacy it would endure for generations.